So hello and welcome everyone. My name's Steve Nobel and today I'm speaking with Elizabeth April on shifting from 3D to 5D. So Elizabeth is a paradigm shifter, a 3D to 5D activist. She channels and downloads information from various cosmic sources in order to pass on new information, a new vision, and new pathways to expanded consciousness. And her website is elizabethapril.com, and I'll send a link out also to a YouTube channel, which has got lots of brilliant information. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Let me start asking you about your journey, because you've got an interesting journey as a sensitive, which was not well received, I believe.
Yeah, so I was born in this lifetime. Right now I'm 28, and I was born with extrasensory abilities. So basically, I had the ability to see ghosts and spirits, tune into energies and chakras, and even speak to interdimensional beings at a young age. Now, of course, I didn't know I was speaking to galactics or interdimensionals at that age. I really thought that I was speaking to, guardian angels and God, even because I was born into the Catholic religion. So luckily for me, both of my parents were pretty open about my gifts. And it was, I was a stark difference from my brother as well, who was a year older than me. So luckily, even though he didn't have these kind of gifts, they were just very open to my differences. My mom, I think, was a little bit more freaked out, a little bit more scared at what I could see. And she downplayed it a lot, whereas my dad was very naturally, even though he was an engineer and he was the one who was Catholic, he was very open-minded, and he would do energy work on us as kids. And he was actually the one who did my first ever past life regression when I was 16. So I was very lucky to, even though my mom was kind of freaked out, she was so loving and so open unconditionally that it wasn't really ever a big issue. So that was kind of like my youth. I was definitely very different in elementary school, and and it was difficult for me to find friends or to fit in, especially with what I can do and what I could see. And I'd go over to friends' places and see their passed away grandfather, and kind of be weird about it. And so around the age of 10 years old, I just kind of shut off, very consciously decided to shut off my gifts and abilities. I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be normal. I just wanted to be like every other kid. And so I got really heavily involved into sports and the athletic pursuits. So of course, here I am going from the very metaphysical world into the very physical world and making that transition. But eventually, it really led to a lot of depression and anxiety because I had shut down this part of me that was so innate, the spiritual soul aspect of who I am. And so through that depression and anxiety around 15, 16 years old, I was really seeking answers. I was really looking for the truth. I remember going to my high school teachers, asking my parents, going to a counselor and a therapist and asking them, you guys are the authorities. What's the purpose? What's the meaning of all of this? What's really going on here? And every single time I was just met with blank stares and disappointing answers. And it was really when I was at the end of my wit's end, really, is when my dad recommended that past life regression. And so at 16, in about an hour and a half, I went into 5 past lifetimes. And this really opened things up for me. This really kind of reawakened me to my truth, my mission of why I was here. In every single one of those past lifetimes, I was in a position to gain access to information. I was in a position to be a channeler, a philosopher, a healer. And at 16, I realized that that was my purpose. That was my mission in this lifetime. So I ended up stealing my dad's past life regression book. And when I went off to university, that's kind of how I made friends, was, asking them if they wanted to, get regressed and go into their past lifetimes and experience something cool. And that's kind of really what reawakened me. So when I went off to university at 18, I started astral traveling, I started lucid dreaming, I started diving into telepathy. I even started getting into quantum physics, and I started downloading information that, it was just like I could have read 10 quantum physics books, or I could have sat for 30 minutes and downloaded information on it. So that's kind of the point that I was at, around that stage of my life. And then I had my first kind of, cosmic abduction, alien abduction at 18 as well, which once again blew open the doors for me of what else was possible, and that you look, like, aliens are real, they are here. And that really started my own questioning of, why are they here? What is their purpose? And why are humans so special and so important that we have all of this cosmic activity from all of these different solar systems and galaxies and dimensions? And, from 18 on, for the past 10 years, I've been diving into these questions. I've been having conversations with galactic ambassadors. I've been tuning into source frequency. I've been, diving into, what is the purpose? Why are we really here? And how do we move forward as the conscious beings that we are?
Amazing, really. Because at 28, I remember in my life, I can resonate depression, anxiety, trying to be normal. I think a lot of people probably do go through this. There's the world out there, which is, fit in, be a square peg or a round peg in a square hole, I could say. I don't think it works for anyone personally, but the pressure is there, of course. So it's quite amazing, your journey, because I find that I didn't really wake up to my early 30s. I'm now in my early 60s now. So I've had that journey. But when I was waking up, there wasn't really much around. There wasn't the kind of support, I guess, there is now. There wasn't an internet. There wasn't, TED Talks. There wasn't all these things going on. So, and now we've got all this YouTube channels. We got a lot of information from people like you, which is brilliant. Let me ask you, can you define, for people who don't really know the definition of 3D to 5D, how would you describe that?
Yeah, so it's definitely, it's quite, untangible in a sense, but it's also important to define so that we can contextualize it. So the different dimensions are actually just vibrational densities. That's how I understand every single dimension, right? In this universe, what I've channeled is that we have 12 dimensions. And it's cool because I think astrophysics also aligns with the 12 dimension theory. And we're obviously here in the third dimension frequency. Now we're pretty low on the totem pole, which also means that we're really dense energetically in the third dimension. So if we just understand the dimensions as different vibrational densities, kind of like thinking water going into, a frozen state, a solid state, moving into a liquid state, moving into a gas state. It's very similar if we can compare that to energy and vibration. So essentially, we are in the ice cube state right now, right? That's the third dimension. We are in the solid density state. And it makes sense because when we observe humanity, we've only ever been focusing on the physicality of this reality, right? The physicalness of this frequency. Now the ice cube is melting, right? The third dimension is really kind of melting away, and we're moving our vibration and energy into this new state. Now, a lot of people assume, because they've got the physical linear mindset, that all of a sudden we're going to be lifted off of this planet, we're going to move to another planet, or maybe a spaceship, or maybe just floating around in a cloud, and that's what 5D looks like, when that's not the case at all. We're still going to be in the same body. We're still going to look around at our living room, and it's still going to be the same living room. What's going to change primarily is going to be our perception. It's going to be our energy. The things that really triggered us or created resentment or created any sort of animosity or density within our vibration are no longer going to be there anymore. They're going to be there, but we're going to perceive them from a higher perspective, which is going to allow us to be above it all. So it's almost like I said, the ice cube melting into the water. And we're kind of going into more of this fluid state, more of this liquid state. And in this more fluid state of the fifth dimension frequency, the concepts that we know and love, such as space and time, are also more fluid. They're more flexible. They're more malleable. They're more, liquid in that sense. So, I mean, if you talk to even just an average person and you ask them about time and 2020, like, how has your 2020 been? Right? Some people perceive 2020 as like, it feels like it's been 10 years, right? And some people perceive 2020 as like, it's been 2 weeks. Like, it's just weird, right? Everyone is starting to perceive time differently. And the same thing with space. We're starting to get many more glitches in the matrix, weird timeline hops, weird things, either being misplaced or being duplicated, right? So these concepts, these linear, physical, solid concepts of even space and time are actually changing in the fifth dimension frequency. Now, although it's just our energy and our perception and our thoughts and our mind and our frequency that's changing, eventually your physical reality will change the more and more you're in this heightened state of vibration. And what I mean by your physical reality is your living situation, your romantic partner, your job are all going to eventually shift as well. It's not as quickly as shifting your mindset, but it is going to shift. Because if you're living in a place that isn't aligned to your highest frequency, then all of a sudden you're going to get kicked out of that place. Same thing with your job. If you're going into your job every day resenting it, hating it, but appreciating the paycheck, eventually you're going to get fired or let go from your job because essentially it's not aligned to that higher frequency. So our physical reality will change, but maybe not in the way of, getting lifted off this planet and getting plopped into a cloud. It's not going to necessarily look like that. But things are changing. And even at a global level, things are going to be changing as well. All of the systems that we have, the political, the economic, the educational system, the religious systems, are all rooted in this very dense 3D vibration. We need to collapse all of those systems in order to reform them and realign them to a higher frequency that it's actually where it's actually serving the whole and the collective rather than just the 1%. So right now we are in the middle of the third dimension frequency, and we are in the middle of the shift moving into the 5D frequency, and it's all out chaos. And I think we're all feeling it, at an individual level and at a collective level. It's chaos, but it's a necessary step to move into this new frequency.
Yeah. In terms of the 3D to 5D, I mean, this is the way I view it. I think in 3D, I experienced a lot more struggle and suffering and what I consider blocks. And I wasn't really aware of I create my own reality concept, which in 3D doesn't make sense to people because they go, well, rocks are hard, water's wet. But when you start shifting, or when I started shifting, I think a lot of people feel the same. This concept of, we create our own reality, which came through channels like Seth in the 60s, this was the beginning of it. And it really grabbed me, that idea, because I thought this was the most transformational idea of the government is not in charge of my reality. My wife or ex-wife is not in charge. I have a power to shift things, which of course, that's a vibrational thing. Would you say?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. That concept alone is, we create our own reality. And it's funny, like you mentioned, it's very difficult to grasp that concept within the 3D state of mind, right? So if someone, rear ends you, right, and you're in your car and you're in traffic and someone rear ends you, to kind of remove yourself from that state and say, oh, I created this, is very difficult to grasp when you're just in that moment. Well, no, the guy behind me who was texting created this. This was not my fault. But in the grand scheme of things, we are creating every future moment. in understanding that every moment in the present is just a vibrational reverberation, and eventually that vibrational ripple that we're sending out is going to come back to us in one way or another. Just like your thoughts and what you focus on create the next moment, and your physical reality as well. So yeah, so that's definitely a 5D concept to move into, and it still applies to 3D people. They're just not necessarily aware of it.
Yeah. Would you say in this shift, because I kind of think of it in terms of two rivers meeting, the old river of 3D, how it's been going on, and a new one, and where these rivers join, there's a lot of volatility and movement, and we're certainly seeing a lot of volatility in the world with the current, sea crisis. And is this all part of the shift?
Oh my goodness, yeah, this has been prophesized to happen. This year, everything that's going on, this has all been prophesized to happen right now at this time. And we need to go through this tumultuous energy. And what's beautiful is a lot of the light workers, a lot of the teachers, a lot of the healers have gone through their own ego deaths. They've gone through their own shift. They've collapsed their own 3D reality in the previous years leading up to 2020, so that we can be in a place where we've already transitioned into that river. And it doesn't mean that we're perfect and we're free of challenge and frustration, but in a lot of ways we're above it, so that we can bring the rest of the people who are in it, who are in the middle of the chaos, who are in the middle of the shift, and we can really allow them to see a higher perspective and a little bit more of a positive approach. And so that's why I think we needed to do the work before this year to really usher in the rest of humanity and bring them through this very tumultuous time.
Yeah, because I must say that for myself, I look out in the world and I forget about this. I go out and then I'm realizing, oh, people are wearing masks and people are trying to avoid me with the 2-meter thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, and I can't hug people. They don't like me. They want to do the elbow touching or something. And I kind of go along with it because people, that's how they are. I don't want to freak them out. But I forget. I have to remind myself, oh yeah, there's a global something or other going on. And I've also noticed, I heard this statement that a lot of the media is controlled. And I was like, yeah, but there's some nice papers and, liberal papers. But my goodness, with this one, I noticed kind of unanimous messages of fear being pumped out right now at the moment. And the fear on the planet is quite high. I'm not quite sure all the star seeds are being affected in the same way, but certainly the majority of the planet who haven't got really much awareness of what's going on are really affected.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's so interesting. The thing that I, have mentioned many times before in previous years is when we take a look and we see all the mass media all coming together under one consensus, under one projected mindset, that is something to question, right? Because I look at that and I say, that's programming. So what is the program itself? And then on the back end, what is the intention of the programming and the projection of such fear, And so, and when you mentioned, I don't know if the star seeds are being affected. I think, like I mentioned, a lot of the star seeds who have done the work are not being as affected, but there are a ton of star seeds that don't recognize that they're star seeds, that don't recognize that they're empaths, that don't recognize that they're sensitive, and they are being so affected and they are being so bogged down by everything that's going on, by their own family members. They're unable to rise above it yet. And it's really sad to see, because they're just so sensitive and they're feeling the vibrations of the entire planet, and they're assuming that they're their own personal vibrations, and they're not, right? They're just empathic and feeling everything. So it's important to get those people on board with the 5D frequency sooner rather than later, because they will be the leaders for the rest of the 3D world.
Yeah, that's our work, I guess. You, me, and others around the planet doing that. Mm-hmm. Elizabeth, can you say something about what holds someone into 3D? What are the main kind of holding patterns or forces?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Essentially, we could talk about 3D all day. And the other thing too is everyone wants to get to 5D, but that's easy. Getting to 5D is easy. Dealing with your 3D is the difficult part of it. The second that you've neutralized and dealt with the 3D vibrations within you, you're moving to 5D easily, effortlessly. So the biggest things that hold people into 3D is attachment and labels, right? It's just like, it's so crazy. But those attachments and those labels will also pigeonhole you into this autopilot programming. And that autopilot programming pigeonholes you into really not thinking for yourself, really not utilizing your conscious mind, really not utilizing your free will, right? And so that really takes away our power in so many ways. So if you have an attachment to your 9-to-5 job, right, that's going to just pigeonhole you into that. And a lot of people hold attachment around labels or things in their life because they don't believe in their own power to create something different. So a lot of the attachment that we hold is actually attachment around fear and lack and limitation. I need this 3D job. I need this 9-to-5 job because if I don't have this 9-to-5 job, then, you know, what do I have? I've got nothing else, right? And a very simple example would be waking up in the morning and you're pouring your cup of tea and you're saying to yourself, yeah, I'm going to drink tea this morning because that's what I do because I'm a tea drinker, right? We need to stop even in those very simple, subtle moments and ask yourself, but do I really want tea this morning? Do I really want to be a tea drinker this morning? Or do I want to be a coffee drinker? Or do I want to be a hot chocolate drinker? Or do I want to be a, you know, a turmeric drinker, right? There's other options on the table for us. And if we're just kind of going about life, you know, living from moment to moment in this almost survivalistic fight or flight autopilot, just doing what we have to do and not realizing that we have a choice, that is what's going to ultimately limit you and stick you into 3D. The more risks that you take, even in the simplest ways of switching up your coffee or tea routine in the morning, and then the more conscious thought that you bring from moment to moment, the more you will propel yourself into 5D, because all 5D is understanding that in this moment we have limitless and infinite possibilities and potential, right? Being in 3D is being linear. It's either one or the other, and that's it, right? And that's very limiting, and that will trap us from moment to moment in that 3D energy.
So one area I just want to ask you about, which seems to hold a lot of people, I know you mentioned work, a 9-to-5 job, money seems to be a big fear. Like, if I follow my path, will I be able to pay my rent? Will I be able to, you know, look after the kids? Will I be able to fund my, you know, training course or whatever? Money seems to be a big one for a lot of people. And of course that attaches to work.
Absolutely, yeah. Money is definitely a huge 3D blocker, 3D limiter, but also it's only a limitation if you perceive it as such, right? In a lot of ways, we've been so programmed, especially programmed by society, that we always need more, or programmed even by our parents that we don't have enough, right?
Yeah.
So we need to really neutralize these programmings within our own mind and our own vibration, and we need to perceive money a different way. So what I say is that if you were to right now think about manifesting or creating money, and if you were to imagine in your own mind $100 bill, instantly you're going to have some limitations around that. Oh, I can't afford that, or oh, that's too much, or oh, I can never do that, or oh, you know, I need to work harder to get that, right? So instead of really focusing on manifesting or creating money, because instantaneously you're already bringing in your own limitations and blocks into that thought, I always go to manifesting to the highest perspective, and manifesting abundance to the highest perspective in my mind is manifesting freedom, right? So instead of saying, I want to manifest $1,000, it's, I want to manifest freedom so that I can go about life and do what I want to do and do what I want to do when I want to do it, and not have to worry about these limiting factors like money. So it's also how we manifest and how we ask for things as well. If you're asking for something that you already have preconceived blocks embedded within, then you're blocking yourself before you can ever manifest it. So not only should you be dealing with the blocks, but you should also be very cognizant and aware of how you ask for things and what's stepping in the way of actually receiving those things. So once again, asking for freedom is going to bring that freedom to you. But not only are you going to get freedom financially, but you're also going to get freedom within your work, freedom within your social, freedom within your communication, right? And freedom within all of the things as well. So money is a huge blocker, but money is also just energy. And you can have a very beautifully balanced relationship with the energy of money and the energy exchange of money as well. And, you know, I've said this many times before, but, you know, we've got a huge population on this planet who are all living in third world conditions where they can't afford to put food on their table. They can't afford a roof over their head. And if you're in that survivalistic fight or flight mindset, there's no way you can ever think about a past lifetime or raising your consciousness vibration. So I think one of the big steps forward that we need to think about globally and collectively is allowing everyone to have their needs met. It is so important because we can't evolve consciously if our needs aren't met and we're still in that survivalistic mindset. However, most people's needs are met and they're still thrown into the survivalistic mindset because they've been programmed to believe that they need the newest, you know, sneaker from Nike that's come out, or the newest car that's come out, or they're not good enough, you know? So it's also just kind of reforming what you currently have and taking that vibrational frequency and that relationship to the next level.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I remember when I was starting my journey back in the early 90s, a friend of mine who was a coach, was coaching someone, and he told me the story. I was really taken aback. He said, I really would like to change my life. He was a banker, I think, but I've only got £100,000 sterling in the bank. And I thought, and that's a block? That was amazing for me. But there we are. Some people can create blocks with, you know, I only have 100,000 in the bank. How about that? So Elizabeth, can you give some advice for someone listening to this thinking, how do I shift my vibration out of 3D? What is the kind of simpler ways, you know, that and then probably you could talk for an hour on it, but what half a dozen or more ways that you think, or the top 3 ways that you can really shift quickly?
Yeah, I mean, you know, so many things. I think one of the biggest concepts shifting your mindset from 3D to 5D is the responsibility aspect of it. You know, the opposite, in my mind anyway, of responsibility is that victim mentality, right?
Yeah.
You're not happening to life. Life is happening to you. And if you go about thinking that life is happening to you and things are just coming at you and you only have one of 2 decisions to make, a yes or a no, then you're really limiting yourself as to what's possible. You're just reacting rather than acting, right? So we really need to switch our mindset to understand, look, good, bad, or ugly, you know, we've created that. Great. So if I created my job loss, then how can I create my next job gain, right? And so this is the responsibility piece is so huge, right? Everything that happens to you. So if you accidentally, you know, knock over your favorite mug, you know, and it breaks everywhere, that's you, right? You've created that and you've created that for a reason. So understanding that everything in our lives we've created, and then taking it the next step and understanding and asking yourself, why? Why did I create that? Why did my favorite mug just break? Why did I just get, you know, rear-ended by this guy behind me? And when we start to really dig into the lessons behind every moment in your life and in your reality, you start to really take your power back. Oh, it's not my boss. Oh, it's not the government. Oh, it's not my husband or my wife. It's me. It's always been me. So that responsibility piece allows us to take these very daunting, very limiting, very suppressing aspects of our life and transmute them into a higher vibration of saying, if I created that terrible thing to happen, then I can create an amazing thing to happen. And then you just start doing it, right? So that responsibility piece, and just, you know, at face value, understanding that everything in your reality and everything that happens in your reality was a result of your vibration, right? That's huge. That is really everything to transmute 3D to 5D. And then just really the other thing that I would mention, like I said, you know, we could talk about this all day, but the other thing that I would mention is always finding the higher perspective in everything, and finding gratitude and appreciation in everything as well. So you broke your favorite mug, you know, that sucks, right? But how can you appreciate that? Oh, well, you know, even though I broke my favorite mug, that actually clears space on my shelf to find a brand new favorite mug, you know, that can occupy that space, right? Or getting rear-ended by some guy who's texting behind you in your car, all of a sudden, you know what? You've got all your massages paid for the next 6 months that are going to be paid out of this insurance claim or what have you, right? It's always finding the higher perspective, always finding the gratitude, especially through the challenges that happen to you in your life. Even if you hate your 9-to-5 job, what is one aspect that you can appreciate about it? Oh, well, there's this guy at work that I really enjoy. Or, you know what? It's money in my bank account and it pays the bills. And that's the only thing that I can appreciate about it. But focus on that appreciation, focus on that gratitude, and that will raise the vibration of every aspect of your life into 5D.
Brilliant. That's a brilliant answer. Can I ask you just finally, what are you up to at the moment? What's your offering? I mentioned your website and your YouTube channel. What are you doing at the moment?
Yeah, oh my goodness, so many things. I wrote my first book. It took me 4 days to write. I mean, it just came through me. And that's going to be released in April of 2021. It's incredible. And the book itself is just what to expect on your awakening journey. It goes through everything from anxiety, depression, to your family thinks you're crazy, all the way to quantum physics and aliens. And it just takes you through all of it. So that's going to be released in April. And then, yeah, I've got tons of, yeah.
What's it called?
It's called Awakening for the Not So Basic Bitch. So it's, you know, it's got that kind of fun millennial type of energy behind it. And yeah, and then I'm also writing now my second book, you know, and I think I'm going to actually finish it by tomorrow. And it's just some revolutionary insights, and that'll be released in 2021 as well. And yeah, and then I just have a ton of courses and programs that I'm also putting together. It's incredible. I love doing YouTube videos, but I also feel like a lot of the information gets lost and left behind. So what the books and what the courses allow me to do is really just kind of bring together all of the pieces of this information and present it in a way that's very easily digestible to people. So I've got a 30-day boot camp, how to reprogram your mind in 30 days. And then I also have a shift masterclass that will literally shift your vibration from the 3rd dimension frequency into the 5th dimension frequency. And those are 2 really amazing courses that I have. And I'm going to be releasing more courses in the future. And then, of course, just tons of free information and content out there across all my social media platforms. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube are really great resources, and my podcast as well. I've got my own podcast called Expand, and that's doing really well, and people really enjoy that kind of content as well.
Brilliant. Yes, I had a look at that. So, Elizabeth, thank you so much for chatting with me. I know you're very, very busy. You're probably prolific. You're doing videos morning, evening, writing your books in 4 days, you know, very busy. I hope you have time to chill in between. So Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Steve. This was, you know, so much fun, such a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll be connecting again in the future.